All right. Hello, Internet, and welcome to a very, very special graphic novel club. Tonight, I have my guest, Stacy Poole. Say hello.
Hello, Internet!
And we have our nemesis, Oddfellows Thoughts.
Happy to be here.
All right. So, tonight we're going to be talking Gail Simone's run on Deadpool, which also includes Agent X, which was the post-movie Marvel take when they were trying to rebrand all the X titles, and Deadpool falls under the X titles technically. And a lot when Agent X was happening, Cable became Soldier X, to give you a rough idea. And so that kind of got rolled into everything, and so we're going to be talking about that run. But before we get started, both of you read this for the first time recently, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so just initially, I wanted to get your guys' take on this incarnation of Deadpool from a more modern perspective, because I read this all as it was coming out. So I guess let's start with Stacy, and we'll go to Travis.
A, it's Gail Simone, and B, it's Deadpool. So, and I've said this before many times, but I don't like the current run of Deadpool, with exception of a few issues. So I thoroughly enjoyed this because it's more of a mellowed out Deadpool. And the writing is just super on point. And it's been a while since I've written a Deadpool book that's been so good, and that I've just been like stoked to read this.
Awesome. And Travis.
So your question is my take on this Deadpool, which this came out in what, early 2000s, 90s? When was this?
Yeah, around that time, yeah.
Versus the Deadpool that's out now?
Or any of your experience with the character, like how did it measure up for you?
I will give it this, that there is a cohesive plot line that goes through the whole story here, and that I think feels like it's lacking in a lot of current Deadpool. Now, that may be because most of the Deadpool that I read tends to be the kind of the mini-series, so I know I'm not committing to anything too much. And it felt less reliant on like one or two gags, which to me it feels like the current Deadpool, even the current run of the actual Deadpool, it feels to me like there's like one or two gags that they want to just kind of keep doing over and over again, and so in some ways I enjoyed that aspect of the older Deadpool better than the current stuff.
I think some people they don't know how to write Deadpool, or they don't know like what angle to take with Deadpool. So I do agree with you. I think, especially like with Duggan's run right now, I feel like they kind of go back to the same thing over and over and over again, and it does get really tiring. And I understand why a lot of people don't like Deadpool because of that. Because I mean, if you're reading, because I mean, Duggan's been on it for a while. So I mean, if you're just jumping on now because of like the whole like Deadpool hype and stuff, then I can totally see why people don't like him. But I think if you like with this book, there's not a ton of gimmicks in it, and it's just like again, I just feel like it's really solid writing, and Gail does what she does so well, and you like get the perspective of Wade, like with his thoughts throughout the entire book, instead of just like, oh goody, like we're gonna shoot guys. But I mean, there's also an element of that, but it's a really good mix between the two.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to take a minute and go on about some of my initial moments with the book, just because I feel like when we're talking about this, I need to be upfront and say, normally when I talk about comics, I try to come at it from at least a couple different angles, try to view it through a couple lenses if possible. I can't with these books. These were like my favorite books around, my high school times. I I can't view them with anything but nostalgia goggles. This is my favorite run of comics all time. I recommend it to everyone. Apparently, not with 100% success. And I I can't separate my love for these comics from like how they are, I guess. And this is the weirdest thing. This is my favorite run of comics. I've read these more than any other issues of comics ever. Rereading them again now because it's been a few years, they're better than I remember. That's how much I love this run. I'm sitting there and I'm laughing my head off again. And some of the jokes just do not sing as well as they once did because a joke is only funny so many times. And I've read these comics over 20 times. I'm still laughing, just not as much. And there's still character moments and building that I just sit there in shock and awe, and I'm just taken aback by again when I'm reading. And so, like, a few of the details become fuzzy and I get to be shocked again, but it's kind of crazy. So, yeah. So we should probably actually dig in and start actually talking about the comics. The majority of what we're going to be talking about is this chunk here, which is Deadpool Classic Volume 9, which runs Deadpool 65 through 69 of the original run, and then Agent X 1 through 6. So that all of that is Gail, Simone, and Udon Studios. Primarily, Alvin Lee is the head artist of that. So we start off with a kind of a crazy page with Deadpool talking about the Yakuza and then feeding some people after a disaster, and how the people that he's hired to assassinate are the people who stole from the Yakuza who was going to help the poor, which I thought was a really weird cultural context page. I don't know. Did that guy's grab you at all?
No.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
No. I was just laughing because he's like, whistle while you murk. And I started, anytime Deadpool sings, I sing the same song over and over and over again, and it stays in my head. So I just sang that while I was reading this entire first half. Because that is what happens with me and Deadpool.
No, I mean, and that's what I love about this run for me, is like you have those moments, and that's fun, and it's characterization. It's the way people kind of understand Deadpool is the crazy fun. But meanwhile, like in all the captions, there's this bizarre amount of character building for 4 characters that are going to be dead in the next few pages. And it's just the amount that you grab out of the amount of words here, to me, is just kind of insane. Like, that's the one thing I think Gail Simone does better than any other author in the business, is her ability to develop and understand the characters that she's working with is unparalleled. Pretty much no matter what she's working on. That's the one thing I think that makes her stand out the way she does as an author.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, she takes characters that I think a prime example of her taking a character and making him relevant and awesome is Catman. Like, I mean, if anybody can write Catman and bring a bunch of people to that character, like, you win at life, and she definitely does. And that is, I'm a big character person. If I don't care about a character, I'm not going to care about the story. So that is, again, another reason why I love Gail, because I always care about her characters, and they always have some inner turmoil going on that you can kind of relate to, even to Deadpool. Like, you can kind of relate to where he's coming from in the story, and I love that.
Yeah. No, and we also get the building of the Black Swan, which is kind of our main villain for this run. And he has a really bizarre ability where he's able to take people's minds and essentially treat them like computers, so he can copy, transfer, or corrupt data in your mind like he's a hacker on a computer. So it's like a psychic but framed very differently, which I thought was a really cool. It's not just Jean Grey with a sword, you know. It's
Yeah. Yeah, and Gail writes villains extremely well as well. Like I think she loves villains a little bit more than heroes. But yeah, I mean, all of her villains are always just so awesome, and you're just like, this guy is awesome.
well,
How many times can I say awesome tonight? I don't know, but it's gonna be a lot.
keep a counter.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody keep track. Make a game out of it.
So, Travis, would you agree that pretty much everyone in this book is a villain? Because I don't know, that's part of what I
Yes.
liked. Yeah.
I mean, they are clearly. I mean, not to say that they don't do potentially good deeds along the way or are good to the people that are around them, but clearly they're all villains. I mean, Deadpool, in my mind, is a villain. He's running around killing people just as much as everybody else is, right? I mean,
Pretty much, yeah.
right, right. Gail's sense of humor definitely comes through in this book. It's she definitely, if she's going to write something and it has this level of humor in it, it's definitely Gail. You can tell that it's Gail if you've read any other stuff that's by Gail. Just some of the gags that are in it and stuff are what I would call classic Gail setups as far as delivering that stuff. Some of it I appreciate and some of it I don't. But yeah, my biggest hurdle with the book, quite frankly, is the art.
Okay.
I struggled all the way through this thing, to be quite frankly, all the way through the entire book, because of the art. It to me is beyond bland. It homogenized is the word I want to use. It just, to me, and I don't want to insult your book, Matt, but
That's what you're here for.
it does. It is so, for me, it is just so, it's so the era of comics that I am so glad that somehow I fortunately did not have finances to buy comics, because I'd hate myself if this is what comics look like during this era. And it's just, to me, there's a lot fundamentally wrong with it. And I am curious, because Gail is on this thing, and it really does, not to say that Gail can't write a testosterone-filled book, but, and I know that she doesn't have a problem with cheesecakey images to some degree and whatnot, but there's a certain amount of this that I'm just like, really? I don't know. Everybody, all the women feel like they're in halter tops and hot pants most of the time. I have a problem buying into, my understanding, and of course this is my limited scope on Deadpool, my understanding is that he's so horrifically scarred that he's grotesque to look at, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he ever looks that way in here. I mean, Karandi doesn't look good, but I was really confused when you get to like the Agent X part. He doesn't even wear a mask anymore. How come people aren't just absolutely running from him in terror? Because he's
Agent X isn't Deadpool.
No.
No. So.
Okay, so that. Okay, so then that completely confuses the hell out of me then. Because I read the whole second half of this book going, this is a guy who's just lost his memory and so now is just being somebody else.
That's what they want you to believe.
So we're going to spoil the crap out of that for you, but since you're probably not going to read the rest, I don't really...
Okay, well, cool. When we get to that, cool. Parts that I did like, I love the parts with Rhino. The Rhino, absolutely hilarious. I love the idea of him being hired. The one thing I do like is I love him being hired to do ridiculous... his missions aren't... I mean, I didn't care about the whole beginning of this thing, quite frankly. The whole him going down, he's going to shoot whoever, and he accidentally mows everybody down, kind of thing. Whatever. I don't really care about that. It didn't compel me anyway. I thought it was funny, his mission to take Rhino's horn. That stuff was pretty funny. Him charging with a chainsaw to try and take his horn off. I found that funny. Him becoming a keychain, that's funny. Those parts I thought were funny. Yeah, I don't know though. I really struggled with the book. There's a lot of elements that I just did not work for me.
Well, and so going back to the art, I want to ask you something more general. Have you ever watched much anime or kind of
Yes.
gone more to that art realm?
Yes.
Do you have a general dislike for that kind of aesthetic?
Um, to some degree, yes, I do. I like some of it, but I'm very particular about what I like and what I don't like. If it and it's if it has a particular style, and I get that this is a style and it kind of plays off of that style, but even that, this feels very generic of that style. Do you know? I mean, I guess for me, whereas there are certain anime that I can watch and I can go, okay, clearly they have a particular style in their anime, and then I can appreciate that for what it is. But this doesn't have that. It just feels very bland. It's so very generic in every sense, and it's not the anime part of it that bothers me. It's the coloring. It's uh, yeah. Uh, Bland is the only word is the word I can come up with. I've been trying to think of other words to describe it, but to me that's what it is. It's very very bland. It's not exciting to me. The page layouts aren't particularly exciting to me. Um, I don't think the attractive people are attractive, and I don't think the ugly people are ugly. I know I'm horrible.
Right, Stacy, what do you think about the art in general? This udon.
I liked it, but then again, I just read Kingdom Come and I hated Alex Ross's art, so objective. Okay.
I want people to be on our side.
See, folks, just to listen
I
to these people.
mean,
Well,
no, I absolutely love it because it's supposed to, like, I mean, the guys that he takes out are, Japanese or whatever. So it goes, aren't they? They're like in Tokyo, right?
what?
If I remember, aren't they?
They're in New York the entire time.
Why did I think they were in Tokyo?
Because it's an Asian gang.
I don't know. I clearly
Well,
was.
they do kind of fly around. Like in the first issue, they start there, and then they go to Germany because
Right.
they're taking on the Black Swan. And that's one thing I really love about the book is there's kind of a bizarre amount of like cultural influence.
Yeah.
And as we go on, there's subcultures that were talked about. So it just kind of, it's not afraid to have some diversity in a weird way. Even though it's primarily white people, we do get kind of a weird amount of diversity.
Yeah, that is very true. But no, I do really. I mean, it's so interesting seeing Deadpool drawn in this way because it's something totally different for Deadpool. It's kind of like how he's drawn in Night of the Living Deadpool, how like everything's black and white and he's very red and he like totally stands out. I love that. I love when somebody takes Deadpool and does something completely different and makes him look a different way, and it's kind of it just brings new life to the character, I think.
Oh yeah.
So and then we can talk about the art in this one.
Well, okay, so
Travis did like the art in that.
Wait, what are we looking at?
if we're gonna talk art, so there's a page in here that has all of our, this is the supposed Asian gang, right?
Yeah.
So you look at their faces, okay? What their faces look like, the way they're colored. That's supposed to be an Asian person. Okay, so what's the Black Swan? Because his face looks exactly the same as those guys from that gang, which looks exactly like Sandy's face. Is Sandy Asian? You tell me. Is Sandy Asian? Their skin color is exactly the same. The way they look is exactly the same. There's nothing to differentiate any of these ethnicities if we're talking about art and supposedly representing these different cultures.
I think you're being Axis racist just because they're Japanese and German doesn't.
You're right. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I don't know. See, like I grew up with friends who really liked anime, so I've kind of been thrown into that world a lot. I've never totally, read it, but I'll watch it sometimes, and I definitely appreciate it. Um, so I don't know. I think because I kind of know the style of anime and how it is, and everybody, all ethnicities pretty much you have the same features for the most part. I think it doesn't bother me as much as it would bother other people. Also, I don't, as long as the art isn't super distracting or super like just it doesn't take away from the character, I don't really care. Like I don't really mind it. So I am more passionate about the writing of a comic more so than the art, unless it's completely like the two don't mesh together and don't work.
We'll get to that later too.
Yes, yes, we will.
So I kind of see what you're saying with the art and the coloring. It didn't bother me because I definitely see little afflictions, and I see the Black Swan as a completely different looking character than the Four Winds. To me, there's different kind of facial features, but you're right, they are kind of maligned. Most people are kind of made to look somewhat more generic, but that's kind of part of the style, as this is kind of somewhere between Madureira and Madhouse. But I kind of see why you don't like it on a certain level. Part of the reason I love it so much, though, is the coloring. It's very bright. It's very crisp. It's very clearly, like Photoshop, digital, very from the age of what's that site? DeviantArt. It's very kind of that sort of look. But I mean, again, like when I was coming up and my friends who were trying to be artists, like that's where they were, and that's kind of what they were trying to be, and that's kind of what I loved at the time. So I'm just so chill with it.
Cool.
But yeah, we kind of talked about the first couple issues, and in here there's kind of a developing character. So Deadpool, when he shoots the Four Winds, or is believed to have shot the Four Winds, and the Four Winds is a gang with 4 factions and 4 leaders, and so he supposedly drops down through a skylight and shoots all 4, and we kind of go from there. After this big hit, he gets Merc notoriety and moves on to his various things, and we get the Rhino issue that Travis was talking about, where he's trying to track down the Rhino's horn so that the Rhino's horn can be ground down for this really old guy to get his virility back to bang his trophy wife, basically.
It's Rhino Viagra.
Right. Who is willing to pay money so he doesn't? Isn't that right? I mean, she really doesn't.
Yeah. She's trying to like buy him off to.
Right, which I appreciate that part of the story. That was funny.
Yeah.
My favorite part too is after the Black Swan screws with Deadpool's mind, his aim is way off. Yeah. And so he's trying to like shoot at the Rhino, and he ends up shooting the guy next to him. And at one point, the way Rhino becomes small, so he's put on a keychain, is there's this Ant-Man spray in the trophy case.
Ridiculous.
That the Jimmy goes to, which is awesome world building. We haven't had a place for Deadpool like that since Joe Kelly's run with the Hell House. And so Deadpool goes, he's like, okay, in order to spray Rhino, I have to aim right between my eyes to like aim right here. It's just like that kind of like detail, like that makes the joke, right? Is like that level of like where the character is at that moment. Like on one hand, it's freaking hilarious. On the other hand, it's like, holy crap, that's such a great like detail to like just put in there and show like how thrown off he is by this event that's going on at the time. I don't know. It's just that blend of comedy and situation that makes this what it is for me, that wasn't really done as well. And when Christopher Priest was writing Deadpool prior to this in the same volume, he tried to do that. He actually tried to write Deadpool kind of like it was a supervillain Seinfeld gag sort of thing all the way throughout, and it just doesn't quite work. But in a weird way here, we get a situational comedy that makes it work for the characters, so I think that parallel is really cool. And then we get Outlaw in here. And Stacy, you were talking about how people are looking out for Outlaw and how she's kind of a big thing. That kind of takes me aback because I haven't really seen her outside of this run, so I don't understand why people are so.
No, I don't know that they are, but just the issue where it's her first appearance just goes for a lot. So I assume it's because it's the first appearance because Gail created her. Like she wasn't in comics before, and I don't know if
I assume it's because of this art. That's my bet as to why it's Deadpool first, because Deadpool seems to be really hot right now, and I think it's that cover. That's why it's Deadpool.
And then the first
It's Deadpool being a pimp master with Sandy there as a bunny. I think is which yeah.
I will say this because I was telling these guys before we went on air, but I met Gail at WonderCon, and in one of her panels I asked her because she was talking about her run on Deadpool, and they essentially brought her on this run because they didn't want to full on cancel it. They were like, we have to finish this run and we want it to be successful. So they saw her website that she had called Women in Refrigerators, and I think she had done something prior to, but this was, I think, definitely like her first thing that she did with one of the big two. I think Marvel was her first intro into the big comics.
Yeah, this was her first big comic thing. She'd been doing Simpsons comics, and she was writing articles online pretty much before this was my understanding.
Yeah. And so I asked her, I said, Deadpool is such like a boys club and such like a testosterone-driven book. Like, how did you hold your own? And she was like, she gave me there was a situation where they wanted to have a bunch of underwear on the cover, or like I think they just wanted like one very sexy like underwear picture or something to that effect, and she was like, okay. She goes, and since I'm a brat, I literally was like, just draw all the underwear, just all of it. Like, it doesn't matter what kind. Don't draw just ladies' underwears. Draw boxers. And that is in this, or it's in one of them. And it's hilarious. And so she kind of was like, I just took it like for what it was, but I also had a giant sense of humor about it. Because yes, normally, and she has said this before, she's like, I'm okay with cheesecakey type art if the story is done well and the characters are fully developed. Then it's just kind of, it's a style and it's comics, and unfortunately that type of art will always be there because comics. But yeah, I could listen to her talk about her experience on Deadpool all day long. She has such a sense of humor, like you were saying, Travis. Like, and if you follow her on Twitter and you read this, you're like, yeah, that's Gail. Like, how she is on Twitter is how she writes Deadpool, and that is how Deadpool, I feel, should be written, because it's funny, but there's also a point to it, and it's not just like, as much as I love, the B. Arthur and Chimichanga stuff, that does, it can get old after a while if that's all he's doing. So, yeah.
Well, and so with the character building, like as the story develops, we get reintroduced to this version of Taskmaster, which plays a bigger part once we transfer to the Agent X stuff. And he was talking about and building up who this Black Swan character is, as kind of a badass and kind of a frilly at the same time. But Taskmaster is going on and on about this bizarre story, and in it you kind of get this weird corner of the Marvel universe that doesn't get talked about a lot, because we're usually, dealing with superheroes and superheroics, and here we're talking about some mercenaries going and dealing with some uprising in some no-name country, basically, which is kind of the corner I like to see a bit more, because it kind of makes the universe make more sense. Because here's a section where the villains who would normally get beaten by, your Spider-Man, your Captain Americas, whatever, earn their keep, have a win, They're not credible threats if they always lose. So
yeah. That's kind of why I like Punisher as well, because I feel like, in one of the Punisher books I read, he's like, they call me when the police can't do the job and the Avengers just won't. And I kind of like that. And that's why I think why I like the characters that kind of toe the line between good and bad. Because I mean, I do, as much as Deadpool is a villain, I think sometimes he's also a good guy. It just kind of depends on the situation or on who's paying him. So I think that's interesting. And for me, I identify more with a character like Deadpool or Punisher than Captain America or Spider-Man. I'm not totally into the heroes. I'm more into the anti-heroes and the vigilantes because I find them more interesting, and I find them more, I don't know what this says about me, but I find them a little bit more relatable. I don't know what that means.
Well, there's some
I end up being a mercenary one day, guys.
Starting your soldier of fortune.
Now that we know what our day job is.
Yeah. So the next issue plays on that point perfectly to me because Deadpool's sent to go kill this guy across the street that randomly became this big businessman's villain because he was fired on his birthday, and so he had to get vengeance. And so Deadpool's like, okay, I guess I'll kill this guy, whatever, it's my job. Like, he doesn't really, like, he's kind of already on board because he's getting paid, he's a mercenary, whatever. But then this guy shows him his kid, who ends up being a mutant with some precog abilities. And Deadpool bonds with this kid really quick that's, you know, like, ugly as hell, and they're joking about how ugly they are. And you say, like, he doesn't look that bad, but in that frame, he looks pretty, messed up to me, Travis. I don't know.
He doesn't look horrific to me.
Well, he never really looks horrific because the whole joke behind it is that he's like in one issue, and I don't remember who wrote it, but he essentially is like, I'm like Ryan Reynolds got run over by a truck. Like, they actually like reference Ryan Reynolds in it, so he's supposed to be attractive, but just with some, you know, disfiguration, if that's a word.
Well, his disfiguration look changes with every artist. So.
It does. I mean, it really does. Like in we have the Head Trip run, and he's pretty gross in that one.
Yeah.
So is Lady Deadpool though, and they have a gross kiss in that one. It's just weird. But
then,
yeah, no, I love. And this is like in I posted a picture of a panel from the latest Return of the Living Deadpool. That's not even, I don't think, what it's called, but that's what I'm calling it now, because I always forget what it actually is called. But in there's like, it's, you know, it's your typical Deadpool antics, and then there's this one moment of tenderness between him and Liz, and that's what I love about this panel, when he's like talking to the kid. And they thing, and I'm just like, it's so, because it's so, you don't expect it, and I feel like those moments, those rare moments where Deadpool actually lets himself be vulnerable, are better served when they're super rare, and not when, like with Duggan, when they're like every 5 seconds he's like, did I tell you I have a kid now? Like, you know, I like these better because I feel like they're more sincere. And I don't know, they hit me harder than if it's every panel. He's like, I have a kid and a wife now. Okay.
Well, see, I'm just the opposite. I think he lacks any depth and humanity, being this walking joke that doesn't care about anything. It's whatever the next pay is. I mean, I agree that moment's a decent moment in this book where he's talking with the kid, but the lack of that as a general rule for me with Deadpool makes me not a fan.
I think a lot of people are the same way. I think that is why a lot of people don't like Deadpool, is because of that, I guess, lack of empathy, would you say?
Right. Well, yeah. And I just...
And as a human who I admit this, I have a cold heart. Like, I mean, there's not much that makes me go, aw, unless it's like, you know, animals or something like that, when it comes to humans. And it's, I mean, I willingly admit this. So I think I identify with Deadpool in that way, in the sense of, like, you're always making a joke because you're so uncomfortable with humans. Like, if somebody's crying, I don't know what the hell to do. And I'm just like, I don't give them a hug, I'm a horrible human. So I think I identify with how he's written because of that, and that's why I like the characters that are super. They're more closed off with their emotions because that's kind of how I am. So I identify more with that. Like if I am in charge of a child, like it's horrible. Like I'm just like, what do I do with this?
Sure. But the difference is that you may not know how to deal with that, but then a good writer would be able to express that, and I don't think that is ever put in the book for me to get that sense of that he's just uncomfortable with people or whatever and doesn't know how to relate to them.
Well, I think in this panel you kind of do get that because he's like, obviously this kid is like super sad.
Sure.
And then,
well, that, like I said, that is one moment where the one moment in how many issues are there of him having some piece of humanity, of some piece of there's something going on in his head besides whatever the next gag is.
Right. Yeah.
And and at some point we're going to get to the other story that's in this with Static X, and that character has more of that going on, but then also suffers from not knowing who the hell he is. So it takes away a huge chunk by making him an amnesiac. I think it then creates a whole other problem for me.
Yeah. I think if Gail wrote Deadpool now, I think a lot of people who don't like Deadpool might jump on the bandwagon because I think she could tone it down enough to make it. Because like I said, I do agree with like all the gimmicks.
Oh, I think if they let her write the kind of Deadpool story that she wants to write, I would be first in line to go and pick it up because I think I would get this other piece of Deadpool that for me is missing and isn't in this. Isn't in it. I still want, just talking Deadpool in general, I still want to pick up the Joe Kelly stuff. To see what's written there.
Yeah.
But
and I think you're right
missing.
because she just kind of was thrown on this book because they were going to cancel anyway. So it would be very interesting, I think, to see if they gave her like a whole run, what she could do with it. Can we like make this happen, guys?
So
no, he's going to be dead. Doesn't matter.
For me, first, this moment with the kid handing him the drawing, the thing he says is
best start in the book, right? By the way, the crayon swan and Deadpool, best start in the book.
Oh God!
Just keep it real.
So the kid with the precog said, "I dreamed this," and it's a picture of a black swan and Deadpool X'd out, and he's like, "I love it. I especially love the blood." And it's Deadpool. Like, I've heard a lot of people describe Deadpool as this really immature character, and but that sort of guy would be the sort of person who would connect with kind of out of sorts kid or an outcast kid like this so well. And that's what's happening here. Is Deadpool's kind of like the cool uncle in this situation, I guess. The way I read it. And like that just made so much sense to me. Like he didn't want to talk to the kid, but once he saw the kid was kind of cool and starts talking to him, like he starts relating and realizing, the 8-year-old in Deadpool like connects with the 8-year-old, and so that just
that's why I relate to that panel because this is how I am with kids. Like, I mean, it's exactly this panel, and like this situation has happened to me before. Where like a little kid at somebody will be like, watch my kid, and I'm like, I don't know, and I'm wearing like a Batman shirt, and they're like, I love Batman, and I'm like, oh, we have something in common. I can talk to you like because I don't know how to like get down to a kid's level unless we're talking superheroes. Like, and then it's like okay. But so I do agree with you. I think he is definitely like the cool uncle that doesn't quite know what to do with kids, and I'm like, I totally get that.
Right, and he doesn't get. Does he get that the kid is showing him the future?
Yeah, he gets that he's saying Black Swan's going to kill him. Because, I mean, that's the thing, is he doesn't want to go there, and the kid may not actually know what it is. Like, the kid just had this dream of, like, a Black Swan and him, like...
Well, he has to know, because he says, I'm sorry, a whole bunch. Doesn't the kid say, I'm sorry? And he's like, oh, no, big deal.
Well, Deadpool's clearly shaken, because the kid gives him crap for, like, hiding his face and all that, and he chucks the image inducer. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like he's shaken. He's like very clearly like shaken up. And that happens right before the last issue, which starts off with, before dealing with, this whole thing that's been building up, we see Sandy in the hospital. And this is a huge moment for me. This was huge because we see Sandy in the hospital. And before that, I think we need to understand that Sandy was introduced outside of this run in a Taskmaster 4-issue mini. Taskmaster and Sandy build a relationship, but it's not romantic. And they have this whole big thing, and Stacey and I were talking about this before. So this guy who beat her up is going out, and Deadpool starts smacking him around, and basically the only reason he doesn't kill him is because Sandy made him promise, which was huge. And then Taskmaster kind of comes out with the lightning and just says the most chilling line. It's like, it's a funny thing, but I didn't promise her squat. And then it's just next scene.
Yeah. This panel right here was the moment I fell in love with them. Because, like, look how daintily he's holding her hand. Like, that's awesome. Like, for that dude to look like that and then to, like, hold somebody's hand like that, and you're like, you like her.
Well, I think that's the thing, though. Like, he's her friend, and he cares about her because she's, like, the only employee. She's the only person in his life at this point. That's one thing that Deadpool had around this era of comics, was Deadpool was always stronger because he had a supporting cast.
Yeah.
And this was his supporting cast at the time, was basically Taskmaster and Sandy. Yeah. But we get a quick run with basically some of the other supporting cast throughout the years of Deadpool really quick, with him crank calling him as he's off and he knows he's going to die.
Yeah.
And so, for those who don't have the scorecard, we get Siren, Weasel, Wolverine, Captain America, and Blind Owl that he crank calls before he buggers off.
I love Wolverine. I love that. I started laughing because I'm a big Wolverine fan, and I was like, "Yep, that's hilarious." This is the panel for everyone who's like, "What panel are they talking? Can you see this?"
Right. and Wolverine says, "Well, when I have to go, I make sure they're fully retracted. Hey, who is this?"
Just like, yes.
I'm kind of sad that there wasn't a bub in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah.
Well, what's funny too is he basically only crank calls Wolverine and Captain America, and then Blind Owl. But like Weasel and Siren, he's giving a legit call to.
Yeah. I think also we need to go back a little bit here and point out that so Deadpool essentially picks up this homeless guy and
a rat bag.
a partner, and he can't speak. We're not exactly sure what his deal is, but he can't speak. And this is so huge because when Sandy's in the hospital, he's the one who tells Deadpool, and like he finally like gets words together to tell him. Like that moment is giant. And
with the Black Swan.
Huh?
Where are you? Sorry.
I'm going back to where Sandy's in the hospital and the homeless guy. Remember? What's his name?
Oh! Last page of 68.
What do they call him? Rat stink or rat?
Rat bag.
Rat bag. Yeah. Yeah, but that's just, it's one of those things that Gail does so well, where there's this character that you're not exactly sure what is happening, but she has a plan for every single character in the book, and like you were saying, like she totally just defines them so brilliantly, and he ends up being kind of a big part of this run. But that moment was like giant, and I was like, he can speak. But then I love that just a few panels later, he goes back to his crazy self, and he's like, I'm in love with Katie Couric. Like, this is
That is crazy.
I love it. Yeah, I love when Gail throws in characters like that, so where they're you think that they're insane, but they bring a lot to the story, even in small doses.
Yeah. Well, and then we get to the end of what was the Deadpool run of the time on issue 69.
Yeah.
And there's this huge setup where Nico, who was the brother of the Four Winds guy from the initial part, is there, and there's a point of him like, I gotta get you some Radiohead because they're just listening to German classical composers of the Black Swan, who's this froofy German aristocrat. And Deadpool barges in, and with Ratbag, and first he forces the Black Swan to cure Ratbag. And Ratbag runs out. Now he's like sane after all his life being screwed up in the head. And then Nico dies, and the building explodes. Like, and so it's this huge moment. The run's ended, and something called Agent X is coming up next, and it's like an extra month or two break before this comes out. Like, this was big.
Yeah. I also love when he's doing his like voodoo, and he's like, and Deadpool's like, come on, Mr. Black, you want to be in my head so badly? Okay, fine, welcome to my nightmare. This panel is...
Well, it's a splash page, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I just freaking...
Well, and for those who don't know, like, this is a cobbling together of images from the run. So you have, like, the bit from issue 11 or 12 where Deadpool's on the rope like Spider-Man. You have a lot of what came right before this, which was Funeral for a Freak, where Deadpool supposedly died just 4 issues beforehand. Well, 8 issues beforehand. And then you have a panel from his first mini, which Madureira did, and he looks like the ugly way you'd expect Deadpool to look. That's like horrific.
That was my understanding of what Deadpool looked like. That he was just a giant walking, face of hamburger, basically.
It comes and goes.
Yeah, depends on who draws him, really.
Yeah. I don't think he's been that hideous basically since then, so. But then we launch into Agent X. And basically to sum up, Sandy finds this weird guy with an X on his face on her doorstep, and she feeds him, and then he decides he wants to be a mercenary for some reason.
Yeah, why is that?
Why is that?
Yeah, I can't remember anything at all. Oh hell, I'll just be a mercenary. That was a logical leap of I don't know. I need some sort of an employment. Let's be a mercenary.
It makes sense at the end. Issue 1 is resolved in the final issue. This is a full run. It has a very satisfying closing.
Awesome.
So he goes on and basically gets trained by Taskmaster, yada yada. Yeah. One of the telling parts is Outlaw comes in to train him, and she points out, like, he can't be Wade Wilson or Deadpool in a Southern draw, because he has ambidextrous aiming. He's a better shot than Deadpool ever was. Which is the first clue that we get that, like, this isn't just like amnesic Wolverine Deadpool. This is something's off. Something's different.
And I just took that as I don't know, when he came back, parts of him came back differently than the last time because he was so damaged. My assumption was he was so damaged that when he regenerated from that amount of an explosion that he was a little different.
Right.
When you were reading this, Matt, at the time in single issues, do you remember reading that and going, "Oh, this must not be Deadpool"?
That's where it came from. I'm like, but this is supposed to be Deadpool, but it's different. But he's not Deadpool. Like, what's going on? If he's not Deadpool, where's my Deadpool? Oh, my Deadpool back! Like, this was the height of me loving Deadpool. Like, when I started collecting Deadpool, Agent X #2 had just come out. By the time Agent X finished, I had every Deadpool comic published up to that point.
Wow.
So throughout this run, like, I just kind of was like, where's this? But I was loving this as it was coming. Also, reading this now, like, I realize how, like, formative this was for me, because, like, I kind of have like, whenever people are like, oh, look at the cute monkey, I'm like, I fucking hate monkeys. And I realize it's basically because of this comic. So yeah, his first job is rounding up basically a circus worth of animals.
Yep.
And Stacey, you were talking about the Punisher, so the second issue probably meant more to you.
Yeah.
So Travis, did that do anything for you with the 4 mercenaries and?
Oh, being hired. Anytime there's a story, and it's been used multiple times over the years, we're getting hired to steal something from the Punisher, which is like gotta be, everybody thinks it's the craziest thing in the world, of course, because nobody really wants to screw with the Punisher in all reality. So that always kind of amuses me to some sense. There's not to continue to harp on the art, but there's some art in that makes you want to scream too. But
well, you don't like Punisher with the goatee?
No, that's not my problem at all. But like there's a part in here where they show Outlaw holding a rifle so horrifically inappropriately, using the wrong eye to look through the scope, that makes me just want to like throw the book across the room. So
wait, where's this? Hold on, I'm looking.
This page right here, right before Deadpool pokes her face, pokes his face in front of the scope, but she's holding a wrong arm versus the eye that she's using to look through the scope. It's just, if you have the first clue about guns, it's just functionally wrong. But
it might work better for her. She doesn't have to worry about kickback. She's stupid strong.
Yeah, but still.
Maybe they're trying to say something about that's how she's so accurate, because she's able to hold guns in a different way.
Yeah, that's what it is. You keep trying to come up with things. The fact is they had no clue when they drew the panel. But whatever.
Yes, no, I do love Punisher's appearance in this. I was quite happy with that. I love how it ends.
Yes.
Oh, they're closing the car.
Yeah. I do appreciate that. In this issue, I'm assuming it's this issue, there was one part that I did like. Him and Outlaw clearly end up being more than just friends. And I love the fact that she's wearing a wig. He freaks out over the fact that she's wearing a wig, and then he freaks out over the fact that other parts of her aren't real. And I love the fact that she delivers the line. What is it? Something along the lines of, "What do you think that women that look?"
You just reckon they grew us out on some perfect body farm somewhere?
Right. I mean, because clearly, she is clearly drawn to the extreme cheesecake. I mean, she wears a mini skirt, right, and the small, just about the smallest halter top kind of a thing that she can. I mean, they use that artistically as much as possible. So I appreciated that. I appreciated the fact that they went, she looks this way because she made a point of looking that way, not that, like most of the superhero or women we see in the comic books are just perfectly bodied people because they're perfectly bodied people because they pulled them off of a perfect body farm or whatever. So I did like that line. I did appreciate that.
And do you know what I actually really don't like about this issue and the character in general?
What's that?
Goggles. I hate the way the goggles look.
Agent X's goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of his. I'm not a fan of his quote unquote costume at all. It's pretty horrible. I do also one thing I will give Deadpool credit for. He absolutely hates country music, so I'm on board with that. So there
Yeah.
there is one good thing about Deadpool.
Yeah. Well, and so then, if you guys are good with moving on to the next issue, and for those watching, we're kind of going issue by issue because this isn't really like, I mean, this is a run of comics. This isn't like a tight graphic novel like stuff I've talked about on here before, so it kind of only makes sense to go story by story, I guess. The next issue introduces this character, Mary Zero. It was kind of interesting. She's this young black girl, and she can't be seen by anyone, but for whatever reason, Hayden can see her.
Agent X.
Hmm?
Agent X, right?
Yeah, Alex Hayden, Agent
Okay.
X. Yeah. And we get some extreme hot dog carting down the road. So there's a hot chase with Hayden on a cart, on a hot dog cart, using it like a skateboard, and some guys in a van who just stole some jewelry that he's supposed to be protecting the store. I just, oh my god, I love that scene. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys thought of Mary Zero, because she's kind of a bizarre character, and she doesn't get used. She's used in one comic after Agent X, so
She's actually a cool character. The idea of her that whatever she has, I don't know, a mutant ability, I'm going to say, because I don't know enough about her to know beyond that, to where she's literally invisible. She operates, I mean, her parents don't even know she exists, basically is what it sounds like. I mean, she just does not exist. And this, Agent X is literally the only character recognized her. I mean, she can walk along and take things from people, and those things just disappear, and people don't even know they're gone, seemingly. I mean, she's that invisible. So, of course, as soon as he's able to see her, she's completely and utterly infatuated with him, right? Because it's clearly destiny that he can see her, so therefore that's her future husband and whatever else kind of a thing.
except she's freaked out because she's like 14 or whatever.
Right. But I don't know. She's kind of cool. There is some interesting storytelling with her. I mean, that's an interesting idea. It's unfortunate that she's in a Deadpool comic instead of something cool, but
She's in another comic somewhere.
really, what issue you said?
Hold on. Comic book database, you're my friend.
But I mean, so she's interesting. She has an interesting role later on. I mean, the dilemma that she gets put into is, I did like that storytelling, that whole idea, the idea of there comes a point where Agent X is mortally wounded.
Yeah.
And what is she? I mean, and she's the only one around. Well, what the hell do you do? Because you can't call anybody up. You can't run and get the a taxi cab or anything to try and save him. So.
Well, I hate to
like
disappoint
that.
you, Travis, but the only other issue she's in is in Deadpool Core Rank and Foul.
Wow.
Well, there's a lot of characters in this run that basically are exclusively to this run. One of the few that outlive it is Outlaw, actually.
Oh yeah. What else was she in?
She was part of the 198 part of the X-Men universe when that was running, and she kind of had a couple brief appearances and a couple issues here and there, but I think she's more or less forgotten at this point. So, yeah. Was there anything else in the hot carding issue that you guys wanted to point out, or?
I like the panel where Outlaw is getting a hot dog, and then and Mary's there, and she goes, "I hope those hot dogs go right to your thighs, show off lady."
Yeah.
I like that panel because it's relevant, after because obviously Outlaw and Agent X have a thing, and then she likes him, so it's kind of a weird non-love triangle, if that makes any sense at all. But I just think that's a nice little kind of, not plot point, but just a nice little payoff, I guess, because it ends up paying off because she, yeah, I don't know. I just liked it.
No, it's a really good moment. That's the thing is, like, I'm not touching in every one of them, but on every page there is at least one great character moment and one great joke. Like, every page, it's pretty incredible. And if you look at it, because I've heard different authors talk about this, and some comic authors like to treat every page as kind of like its own body.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Fraction in particular, for one run, tried to make every page have a cliffhanger at the end, so like there's something hanging on every page, and that's not necessarily here, but I feel like there's enough of a beat so that like there has to be something for the story, there has to be something for the character, and there has to be something funny each page, and that's
it's very consistent.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. And again, that's one of the things that I love about Gail's writing is it's always consistent. And I thoroughly enjoy it because when I go into a Gail book, I kind of know what I'm going to be getting, and it's awesome when she can surprise me and make me go, what the hell? Like, I love that because she, especially with Secret Six, she does that all the time, and I'm just like, what just happened?
Well, and in more so than Secret Six, Birds of Prey, anything else she's written, the pace in here, like what's frame by frame, page per page, pound for pound, what makes this so much better than even the rest of that is there's just so much here. Like, there's so much content to mine.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why this is such a great read, is just every page has something to add.
Very much so.
Wait. You're saying that the page-by-page content of this and the Agent X stuff in this outweighs Secret Six and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, no. Like I said when I started this is my favorite comic run of all time.
Okay.
I think there's more page for page here than Watchmen, so I'm probably off on a ledge. But
Right. Okay. As long as we're reading, okay, yeah. No, that is so not the case. I mean, I get the idea of having a love affair with something that you loved as a kid, and you're just gonna love it regardless. This is not, for me. It is not an awesome piece of comic book work.
this says more about humanity than any other comic I've read.
No.
I can tell there's more character types and
No. It is so largely bland and homogenized, just kind of fluff work of a du jour of big-chested women and guys with big guns telling bad jokes.
But isn't that all we really want to be deep down?
Matt, thank God I'm not you.
So, okay. So
this went downhill so fast.
Well, I'm sorry. I'll let people love their books, but there's at some point that it gets deep enough that I can't take it.
I will say this. I love Gail Simone, and I liked this, but I didn't love it as much as Matt does.
no one does. No one does.
No one does.
So a huge chunk of why I like this when I break it down is because of, to me, like I said, like when you read Spider-Man, okay, that's a soap opera. When you read Watchmen, that's a drama or a murder mystery at heart. This, at its heart, is a sitcom.
Yeah.
And the joy of sitcoms, the brilliance of them when they're done right, is they find something about the average, the more banal moments of life, and find something exquisite in them. And that kind of is turning it on its head, but that's what makes this work, is like it's totally off the wall, it's all superhero hijinks, but the character relations and stuff make it so that it has more meaning, has more relatability, and hooks to you deeper than anything else. And people making stupid jokes, I'm going to connect to better than any stupid blonde hair, blue-eyed paragon of righteousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I'm a giant sitcom fan, so I totally agree with you on that. Yeah.
and while that's going on, things build in the Marvel Universe to kind of keep trucking along. So there's a moment in here where Alex and Mary Zero are at a restaurant. It's a Latverian restaurant, so there's like a portrait of Doctor Doom in the background and stuff. And apparently a Latverian dish is sea monkeys.
Yeah. I love it.
There's a Marvel factoid for your trivia night.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, I like the couple that are eating like behind them and
Food is not sex.
I like this is amazing.
See, that's what it takes to love this run, is you have to find the humor, because we're laughing and Travis is just dead inside.
I'm laughing at you. I am laughing, but I'm laughing at you. I can appreciate you appreciating the book, but... And maybe it's the fact I am not a big sitcom fan. It takes the right kind of sitcom for me to think it's funny. Three's Company was never a funny sitcom for me.
What's Three's Company?
There you go. Well, that's probably the last sitcom I didn't enjoy. But yeah, I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, like I said, there are some funny moments in it, but there has to be something that fills in the gaps between that, and for me, there isn't. And I'll just keep saying that.
Well, I mean, it's totally. I mean, this is why this is an awesome conversation, because like what you love, like I might hate. Like I know, like everybody, like, and I'm just gonna use Kingdom Come as an example because that is a book that people love, and people are like, this is an amazing book, and I love it so much, and it's one of the best books of all time. And I read it, and at the end of it, I went, I can never read that again, and I will be okay. Like, I had to force, like, as you had to force yourself to read this, I had to force myself to read it. And because it was for school, the only reason I was like, okay, I have to push through this because I don't want to fail. Like, that was kind of, if I didn't have to read it for school, I would have put it down.
What school are you going to where you have to read Kingdom Come?
No doubt. That's so...
I want to go there and get 4.0.
Oh.
I know. Our next book is All-Star Superman. That's going to be another real fun read.
That's a good. That's a good book.
If you want to learn about All-Star Superman, please check the community project.
Yeah, you can. I was gonna say you can just watch the community project and get all the cliff notes from there and never read it for yourself. I guess. Yeah.
Oh God, no! You have to read it. That's the best Superman story. Anyway.
It's a good story. It's a good story, regardless of being Superman.
Yeah, because everyone's saying that, you know, it'll make me a Superman fan because I hate Superman. So if it makes me a Superman fan, then haha on me.
You don't have to be a Superman fan, but you have to appreciate All-Star Superman.
It did not make me a Superman fan. It did not make me a Superman fan. But I will tell you, it is good comics.
Okay.
It is good comics.
Anyways, I loved all the comics we mentioned, but in the next issue, we get Arcade. Do you guys remember Arcade? The guy
He's still around.
What?
They're still using Arcade.
Where?
They just used him in that. What is it? Is it Avengers Academy? Isn't he? Yeah. Wasn't he in Avengers Academy pitting the Avengers against each other?
Yeah, he was in that. Whatever that one was.
Yeah.
That's news by now. Kids don't remember that. That's not.
That's like what, a year and a half ago almost?
That's Marvel Now, which is kind of like saying modernism anymore. It's past.
We also forgot to mention that in a few issues back, Dazzler made an appearance, and I was super
in that one issue, yeah, Dazzler comes in. That's a really interesting point, and it boils down to one exchange between Deadpool and Dazzler, where Dazzler's like, I don't need you, I have a bunch of friends that can take care of me, they're like super powerful and whatever, and Deadpool's like, really? Where are they now? And she basically just tears up. Take that, Dazzler. No one loves you.
Even Gail.
Oh, and and in that comic, there's the pamphlet because the guy who's killing Dazzler is because he hates disco and he thinks disco is a bad influence on kids. Shout outs to Seduction of the Innocent. Anyways, in there he has that stupid little pamphlet, and the Kirby tosses it aside and is like, he's no Kirby. But what did you think of the art in that pamphlet, Travis?
The art in the pamphlet, I don't remember that. Let me look really quick.
Well, if you liked the child's cartoon drawings...
it was like the stick drawing stuff? Is that what it was? See, that was pretty good.
If you don't like the art, I don't understand how you can't like the demon piranha with the rhino bursting out. That panel speaks to my soul.
And I want a rhino on a keychain. Like, I want one so bad now. Like...
Everybody gets their stupid Groot tree. I want rhino on a keychain. That means something to me.
Petition for rhino on a keychain.
Oh, just wait for the movie, huh?
Yeah, we're just waiting for the Deadpool movie because that worked out so well last time.
Yeah. I have concerns.
Shout outs to Wolverine Origin. God damn. I have history with that movie. Anyways,
moving on.
I almost got fired. Anyways, there's a brilliant character moment with Arcade because our Agent X, our intrepid hero, has his airway blocked, his trachea, and so Arcade comes in, sticks a pen in, and has him breathing out of it. I think you're saying that was a MASH reference. I think that's just a medical.
No, it's so funny because in the current Return of the Living Deadpool, in Duggan's last. That's what made me like the last Duggan issue that I read. He sticks a pen in the guy's throat. And he's like, I saw this on an episode of MASH. Hawkeye did it, except for it wasn't Hawkeye. It was Father Mulcahy and Radar. So clearly Duggan doesn't actually watch MASH, but it's okay. He still put a MASH reference in it. I'm like a giant MASH fan. I know. I can talk MASH all day long. Like, it's a thing.
Anyway, so this pen's at him, and then Arcade's trying to jot down some notes to fix up this amusement park that he has, and he pulls the neck out. Oh my god.
It's hilarious.
Good times.
Yeah, that panel is awesome.
And so the Four Winds, all of them are basically trying to hunt down and kill our crew, and then we end up with the finale of this book where they have drop-down, drag-out fight, and there's some crazy stuff. And Alex comes out against, people with snow cone powers. Stupid Freezy Pop.
Yep. I like this one. Eat the apple. Eat the apple like a man. This is why I love Deadpool, because I cry laugh every time I read it. It's just so enjoyable. It just really is.
And so, before we start rambling about stuff that Travis hasn't read necessarily, do you have any final thoughts on the end of this book, or?
Who are you asking?
I'm asking
Travis
you.
hates us right now. That's his final thoughts.
Yeah, basically, it was. Like I said, for me, the book was as a whole. I mean, I can go through. I rooted back through it today to find some points that I liked about it, so I wouldn't just sit here and rain on it the entire time. But I just did not think it was very good. Like I said, the art is almost unmanageable on a number of levels. But I can get what you're saying about it. If I look at it in terms of a sitcom, a little bit, I still don't know if it's a successful sitcom even. Yeah, I don't know. For me, this feels very early in Gail's career too. She writes She writes a much better book now than this.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I just see it also suffering from a lot of the elements from an era of books that I'm glad that I missed out on.
Yeah.
Well,
And like we said, I mean, she was kind of thrown onto it, so I think
Sure.
that probably
That's
helped
how a lot of new writers get started on books. The books are already canceled, and
Yeah.
they just let somebody who they don't have confidence necessarily in finish the book out because it doesn't matter. Yeah.
my
Right.
understanding of this book was a little different. Like, there were struggling sales, but what they wanted to do was try to wrestle away the character Deadpool from the title and do the Agent X and Soldier X things, because those two characters, Rob Liefeld has a certain amount of cachet on, so every time they do that,
Oh.
they have to pay him a fee. So in order to make it more fiscally viable, they were trying to move it on. They're hoping with all the X movie buzz and with doing a big relaunch of basically half the Marvel titles, that it would cause us kind of stir. And it didn't quite get the traction that they had hoped for, but the sales did pick up.
Yeah.
And so we were able to move on. And so, whereas Cable and Deadpool didn't get to stick around as Soldier X and Agent X, property-wise, they basically just combined the two into one book, Cable and Deadpool, and that's part of the reason that those two were put together, was so that they could have those two characters that were popular at the time and now had a bit of increased popularity, but they only had to pay the royalties back for one book.
I love the backstory, that kind of stuff. That's great, and very corporate evilness kind of stuff. Yeah, awesome.
But it led to some of my favorite comics. So when I bitch about the corporate stuff, I do have to remember, like, I'm more aware of that now, and so I have to kind of keep that in mind, that sometimes bizarre restraints can lead to some cool things. Because Cable and Deadpool is also another amazing run that I have a lot of love for. So
Me too. I that's one of my favorites as well. I love Cable.
So anyways, moving on to the next book, that underwear issue that Stacey was talking about is Agent X #7, which is, I've talked about this I don't know how many times on my channel, my favorite single issue of comics ever.
Because of the underwear?
Because I nearly died laughing at this so many times.
Why the foot comes in. Like, it's hilarious.
Why the pheasant comes up.
Yes.
So that's the thing, is, like, I don't want to talk about this issue too much because it basically hinges on whether you like the humor or not, and it's basically just one gag after another with all the underwear. But on top of all the underwear, the premise of it is that Agent X is hired by this guy Shameful William, who is an omni-fetishist, which is a concept that it just struck a chord with me. So he finds everything
Erotic, huh? Ah.
erotic. So there's just a bunch of weird stuff where he's like, "Look at you, Spool, you naughty, naughty Spool." And Alex is just listing things at him. He's like, "Pat Buchanan? Oh, yes. Garage door openers? So functional." Like, it's just like, oh.
Yeah, no, he says, Agent X goes, "So lawnmowers?" And the guy's like, "Yes." "Canned ham?" "Yes." "Pat Buchanan?" "Oh my, yes." "Cheese slices?" "One likes to undress them slowly." "Garage door openers?" So functional." "Poodles wearing sweaters? Don't tempt one." It's hilarious. It's just so funny.
And there's just underwear everywhere, and it's just,
All the underwear.
it's just good times, basically. I couldn't recommend it highly enough, but I also... it's one of those things where I love trying to talk about comics and trying to find different layers. This is just fun, and that's something that I think kind of gets lost when we're talking about a lot of the mainstream stuff sometimes, because we don't talk about, like, more indie stuff or bizarre stuff, or, like, the comic that kind of comes to mind right now that's coming out that kind of has this sort of quality to it where there's not necessarily a great way to talk about it, but just to impress people that they should read it, is Shudder. Like, there's some just creative, bizarre, awesome stuff that's just there, and it's just the joy of comics and just the joy of a fun, creative story. So, and that was supposed to be Gail and Udon's last issue.
Yeah. Let's talk about what happened after.
The Udon does get to continue to do the covers, so he gets some sexy girl and him drinking root beer, which I thought was...
We get cover, and then we get... I was like...
Oh, show us some pages of interior art. It can't be worse than what I was just looking at.
Here's a splash page an idea, so you can see Agent X drawn in a different light. And here's the thing, is it's drawn like a super serious, kind of like a Punisher comic. I think these creators worked on the Punisher at one point. Buddy Scalera and Mitchell Brettweiser. I'm not 100% on that. But yeah, the problem here with the art, this is what I was mentioning earlier, is that they're trying to... This author decided that Alex Hayden was more than anything basically a sadist. And so he just takes joy in, like, harming people. And the joke here in this book is that he cuts off this bodyguard's hands, so the guy has 2 hook hands. And the humor's lost because as opposed to being kind of like an anime, cartoonish sort of vibe, you get this kind of bizarre, kind of gritty look, so it's like, ha ha, I cut off his hands, I'm the man.
He looks like Michael Rooker here. Like, I mean, and not in a good way. Like, oh my, and it was one of those things where I gotta be honest, I skimmed through all this until I got, and then I was like, oh no, this is the rest of the book. I'm going to, like, have to hate on on a Deadpool book, and then it goes back to Gail, and everything becomes magical again.
Well, there's another 2-part chunk that we do have to talk about,
yes.
Which is Evan Dorkin of Fight Man fame, and if you buy this trade, you get the entire bit of Fight Man, because in the back of this, they have this Fight Man 1-issue special, which I couldn't finish.
I was so confused. I was like, those words.
So basically, Sandy's called out to do an assassination because Alex is out on some other job, and then they get out there, and then you find out Sandy's being written completely differently, and she's basically a really horny version of Danger Girl, is the best way I can do it, and it was this frame in particular, and this artist is just...
Yeah.
But that's like, I swear that panel's in Danger Girl. Yeah, I was a 14-year-old boy once. I read Danger Girl. Deal with it. Do you ever read that, Travis?
Yeah,
No.
Travis, do you think this art is... Okay, in
He hasn't read it.
Udon's art is much better, right?
No. Plain and
You
simple,
haven't seen
it's
it.
not.
You can't judge.
Just looking at the little bit that I've seen there, I prefer it, the style that it is. I can't tell you whether or not it's better art in the sense of does it tell a better story, because clearly I don't have it in front of me to be able to look at panel layouts and do.
Like, that's him again, Agent. Like, what? He looks like a totally different human. It makes... Oh my gosh, yeah.
I rather see bad art than bland art, and that last trade is 100% pure bland. It is just this one tone, one note.
Wait,
This is coming from the guy who bought every issue of Shaolin Cowboys, so I'm not taking
Dang
it
straight.
that much stuff.
Daro is an
I have to say
outstanding
this.
artist.
So-
Outstanding
so-
artist.
Do you like the cinematography in the Dark Knight movies?
Yes, I do.
You talk about bland and one note.
Oh, as opposed to oversaturated and cheery and once again homogenized into kind of a one-note thing.
What can I say?
But that's a whole other argument.
It is. And no one will ever make me
Cool.
I love how subjective art is, because it's like,
well, 100%.
what I love, like I said, like what I love, somebody else like totally doesn't like, but we all just enjoy comics.
But
it's fun.
And I agree with that to a point. That we all like what we like and we don't like what we don't like as far as art is just an artistic, an aesthetic. There it is. Then that's all. But there's art that I think is aesthetically unpleasing, but it's still very functional to tell a good story, because comics and sequential art has other stuff going on other than, look, this is a pretty picture and this isn't a pretty picture.
Right.
And so there's storytelling elements that are supposed to happen there too. Some of those elements are controlled by the writer. Some of those elements are controlled by the artists themselves and what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything about the volume that I have that stands out as good storytelling art.
Right. And like if you put this up against like Batwoman Elegy, where those panels are like, and that is an instance where the art literally like tells you the story, and it's like panel direction, and I mean that art is brilliant. So yes, when you compare, like you couldn't really put these two together.
Right.
And that is Batwoman Elegy, I think, is one of the most perfect examples of using art to tell your story and make. Oh, it's so good. I love it. Somebody's borrowing my copy right now, and I'm so mad because I want to read it again. But yeah, so I think that if you're talking in that sense, then yes, I do agree.
Well,
right.
So, I mean, Batwoman Elegy is really good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it quite measures up to the art that we're seeing in Agent X and Deadpool here.
Wait, what? Okay, this will be where I disagree with you.
Well, okay, no. So, obviously, the panel layout in those comics are brilliant and took us by storm, and
it's so
we're amazing.
It totally goes with who Batwoman is as a character. Like, I mean, that book is one of my absolute favorite graphic novels of all time.
But one could make the argument that level of density and complexity could be somewhat confusing and misleading.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I certainly wouldn't say that it necessarily is the best storytelling apparatus. I love it to death too. I think J.H. Williams can do great stuff. He may be at the point now where he's taking it overboard. Not that that's going to stop me from buying his stuff and loving it to death.
Mm-hmm.
But there is such a lack of craftsmanship in this art house style of thing. There just is.
There's not a lack of craft. There's just a focus on crisp, clean look.
No.
Wait, okay, so because I didn't read or collect these types, I was probably reading Calvin and Hobbes when this came out, but was this like the general style of art for this time? Is this pretty much like
No. This okay. So a brief rundown of Udon's art history. Udon Studios basically kind of came up with some artists. Their history with Marvel is primarily they were hired to do coloring to get some issues out quicker, and so they were on like Uncanny X-Men. They did the coloring for a lot of the issues where they weren't having anyone do the penciling or anything in here, and so they did a lot of coloring for Marvel. But they did these issues, and they did the Taskmaster mini for Marvel. That's all that they've done for Marvel. They never did anything for DC, and primarily they've worked on doing Capcom property comics under their own publishing house, basically. So they do a lot of like Mega Man comics, or did for a while. They do basically all the Street Fighter comics, Darksiders.
They stick to drawing 8-bit characters because that's easier for them to do.
16-bit at least.
Okay,
but no,
16-bit.
Woo! Hey, the Super Nintendo. Oh my God, I'm not even gonna go into the relative art merits of the console wars, but the art that they do is huge, and they've even done a lot of work for Riot Games, with the most popular game on the internet right now. So there's a large segment of people that appreciate and love this kind of art, but it does lend itself better to kind of a design commercial area.
Yeah, i.e., no character.
This run has more character than frickin' anything else you could throw against it.
Okay.
Oh, this is so much fun, guys.
Look, you can say what you want about different stylizations and stuff, but if you look at someone like, say, Yannick Paquette, the expressions here lend themselves to more comedy and more human emotion than that sort of thing, or pretty much anywhere else. That's why these books end up being so funny, is because how expressive the characters are. If that art isn't there, those jokes aren't sold. So, I mean, because there's a lot of like Joe Kelly's stuff where he wrote some really brilliant gags and some really great moments that are really funny, but they're murdered by the hamstrung artists that they got at the time that just don't make those jokes work because they can't draw a human expression separate from another human expression. There's some detail and some nuance to this art that you're not giving it credit for. Anyways. The important part with the Sandy bit where Fight Man's involved is that this writer put Alex and Sandy together and they sleep together. That's basically all you need to know moving forward. And then, okay, Stacey, what did you think of the Daniel Way issue?
That one. Let me turn to it. Let's go. I don't know why I can't find it now. There we go. This, again, the art is so weird.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I was like, I just can't.
Yeah.
I will give it this. I do like creepy, demented things, and it definitely delivered that. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's midgets, clowns, and rednecks.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. I was like, is this Preacher for a minute? I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, it is kind of Steve Dillon-esque.
Yeah.
Steve Dillon,
especially after
really
I just reading the Preacher. So yeah, it was. But again, like he was drawn so. I don't know.
Better than the other two artists that we had that were Udon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to hold this up for Travis to get a sense if he likes it more than Udon. Does that look do anything for you?
Looks good to me.
You're just trolling me now.
Well,
I don't. Okay, seriously, I don't see how I can't not troll you with your opening statement that this is the best thing ever in existence for you for comics. It's and my lack of care for it. There's no way I can't not troll you about this book. So I don't know what to tell you.
I'm not buying you anything ever again.
Awesome. I need to find out what your address is so I can send you stuff.
Yeah.
I'll send you my address for free comics.
This panel, for some reason, when I read it, reminded me of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland, when you go through hell and then the ride ends. I don't know why, but I just remember reading that and I was like, oh. But I don't know. I mean, going off of Gail's run to this is just, I mean, it's such a letdown, and you're just like, oh.
I will say this. Daniel Way's issue of the 5 here, because there was two-parters, and he got one slightly oversized issue. Daniel Way, of the horrific crap in the middle, is the best, but it's also not that great. And it's interesting to see that now, because this was his first kind of take in this area, and later he goes on to write the longest uninterrupted run of Deadpool that has yet to be beat. And God, I hated it.
Yeah.
So is it the fact that it just doesn't have the same sense of humor? I mean, what about it is bad? I mean, you guys are both groaning about it being bad, but what elements are missing in this piece of Agent X / Deadpool that was in other stuff that you liked?
I think characterization.
The characters in there, the humor is in there, the art's completely changed, so it's kind of a tough pill to swallow. It's just, and also it's impossible to judge it, because Gail Simone had this whole thing going, had the whole thing run, and then some guy comes in with some stupid Invisible Guy story that just is terrible. The next guy does some stupid thing with Fight Man, has Sandy and Agent X sleep together, which is just wrong, terrible, and has to be reconciled. And then there's this one issue which, as much as I'm not huge on Daniel Way, he did some cool stuff with Wolverine, but I can't even, like, this issue's alright, and I can't even imagine what the hell, because this was supposed to be the last issue. This was the last issue of a dying comic of a character that at that point had been around for 12 issues, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
So they didn't care, and so they just, it's like a lot of dying comics. They didn't care, so they just put out whatever without any investment.
Yeah, except this ain't no Amazing Fantasy 15.
Right. So is
like, the way I guess I could explain this is if Gail just randomly came back to Batgirl. Like, you had like this where it's at right now in the middle, and then like she came back, and then you have like what you know as her Barbara Gordon, but they totally changed the character in the middle. That's kind of how I think I can describe this. And with Gail's writing, like, if somebody else tries to write the book that she's done, it's so, because she's so brilliant, it just falls. I think, anyway, because she's I don't know. Her writing is always so on point and so good, and it combines, because she genuinely cares. And I think that shows, like, she's very proactive about it. She's proactive about helping other writers, like people that want to start in comics. Like, she truly loves writing. And so I think then if you have somebody else who's just like, I like writing comics, but doesn't care to the level that Gail does, it totally, it suffers.
Well, I don't know that you can make a judgment on these comics of whether or not these guys that are writing it cared or didn't care about the work they did.
Well, but I'm saying, like,
Sure.
it's like, you see Gail's stuff and it's so good, and then you have these guys come on and it's like.
Is part of the problem is that Gail was given a longer leash as far as she had more issues to tell a longer breadth of story, and these are just short little things that nobody cares about?
Yeah.
No.
No, because
the best way I can put it is when Stacey was talking about the underwear issue, like, she was rebelling against that, like, she was taking her leash to the full extent, right? But she did it with a character, and so, like, there's this hyper-masculine bit, but you're subverting it, and that's where a lot of the comedy comes from.
Yeah.
These guys are writing these hyper-masculine comics with no sense of irony, and therefore no sense of the comedy that was making this book what it was.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
And so
I'm just curious. Clearly I haven't read it. You guys hate it. I clearly am not going to read it because I have problems reading the stuff you guys love. So
this is worse.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I'm just asking from a purely, curiosity's sake as a reader of comics, what was the breakdown of the comic? So that's why I was asking. I'm just curious.
For me, obviously, as we've seen with Batgirl, it's very hard for me to, once and it would be this way if Scott Snyder stopped writing Batman and they brought somebody else on, because I love his writing so much. Once I find a writer I love, it's really difficult for me to be able to accept a new team coming on because I'm very particular, as you are with art, in the type of writing that I like. Like that for me is like that is my thing.
You're gonna abandon a lot of comics then over time.
Oh yeah,
Don't stay on comics for a long time. What's that, man?
Which is fine because I don't so much follow characters as I more follow writers, and I'm okay with that because then I can go on to something else for a while. Like I mean, if Gail hadn't have been dropped from Batgirl or left Batgirl, I don't think I would have ever really. I probably would have eventually discovered Red Sonja, but it makes me. It just gets me into new genres and new characters, and I thoroughly appreciate that because it's not like, and I don't get, Batgirl is the exception. I got obviously very angry about Batgirl because that is a character, Barbara Gordon is a character I care very deeply about.
Sure.
So I think if I didn't care so much about Barbara Gordon as a character, and I didn't love Gail so much as a writer, I don't think I would be as offended. I think that I would be like, okay, like Gail's leaving the book, I can leave the character. But because it's Barbara Gordon, and that's the character that got me into comics, there's a very, like with Deadpool, he's a character that I do like. I don't like Duggan's run on it, so I can leave the book. Like it's not, and I can come back to it. So yeah, and people tell me that all the time. They're like, you're gonna like stop and start runs all the time, and I do.
But that's probably a healthier way of collecting comics, because then you don't end up with how many issues of Deadpool do you have, Matt, that you absolutely hate?
That I hate?
Yeah, that big chunk in there. You said there was that chunk. What's his name came back and did that run, and you didn't like it.
So I don't like Way's run by and large, but he has the way he writes is so weird. But yeah, okay, so that's like 70 some issues. But it's all him.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, though, is you suffer through 70 issues because you like a character. As opposed to the potentially healthier way of collecting comics is to go, you know what, I don't like this, I'm dropping it like a rock and going on.
Well, that was a weird case where, the way I love Deadpool, and I loved Deadpool at the time, like, I wouldn't do that with any other character, and also I had to read those Daniel Way comics, because half the reason I really hated it when he started doing it was because I had a small interaction with him online when he was starting out. And I wanted to make sure it was his writing and not his writing at me that was informing it. So.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. What I was going to say is Gail Simone is an interesting comic writer in that anytime she's had a major run, by and large, the arc that follows her on that run is really not well received, and probably the biggest exception to that is the Batgirl one, which was a decisive response that kind of split people like one way or the other. But whether it was kind of like, here I say with Agent X, but I mean immediately after Cable and Deadpool, that was pretty well liked by people. But like her Wonder Woman, no one else did Secret Six, and
even like Red Sonja,
she has an interesting career like that.
Like there's some guy on Red Sonja, I forget, I don't remember who it is, and then I think Nancy Collins is also on Red Sonja, and people have, I think, because they either didn't know or something, like I've recommended Red Sonja to them, and then they come back and they're like, I didn't like it, it was very like cheesecakey, and I'm like, what did you get? And they're like, I think like the Dark Tower series was what somebody got, and I'm like, that's not Gail's run. Like, you gotta look at who's writing it, because it is very interesting. Like she just, her characters are so strong, and then if somebody else comes in with that same character, it just kind of falls, because I don't know what it is. It's just.
I think Tony Bedard's run on Birds of Prey after Gail Simone left was perfectly fine, and there were good stories and good comics there because he took what Gail had already done and ran with it. He didn't come on the book and decide we're going to go fundamentally with a different way with the book. And that's a huge thing. sure he went and looked and read those books that Gail had set out. The people's speech, their patterns, everything about them, their behaviors, all stayed the same. I mean, they told a little bit different story because clearly he had his own stories he had a desire to tell. But the characters responded to situations in the same way, so that makes it seem somewhat seamless.
Yeah. And you're totally right. I'll be honest, I forgot that happened because that is the only time in comics too that I've seen it where a creator like came back like that quick. So it's just kind of like I think there was like a couple writers, but one was only for a very short while, and then she was back on Birds of Prey. Like
when they relaunched it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't read a ton of Birds of Prey yet because I'm trying to get them in trades, but yeah, it would be interesting to read those because I think I would be fine with that.
Well, and Bernard is.
Yeah, and good. I think it shows that person he might have like talked to Gail about it, and they might have been friends, and it might have been like a really cool situation. And I always like people who are fans of each other. That's kind of how I got into Scott Snyder, was because Gail like recommended him on Twitter and stuff. So I always like that kind of like camaraderie between writers. And if that is the case, and Gail is like supporting the new writer or whatever, then I'll definitely check it out for sure. So that sounds like that was a good situation. And it's always good if everybody leaves on good terms.
Well, yeah, and I think she was leaving to go write Wonder Woman at the time. So.
Yes, which I love her Wonder Woman run as well. So.
Oh yeah, but
Deadpool.
She came back to this book that we're talking about, and so.
This panel made me happy dance. When it's like, Gail will be back, I was like, yay!
Oh, yeah. And so, what was your reaction to the first few pages? Because, so in between these issues, there were months in between. This was 3 issues, and it took like 3 months in between. And then it came out, and it was... I could still like feel the energy of the time because you see it and you're on this boat and they're coming out El Americano porque você tá rude, and I should have known that wasn't Deadpool, but you see it and then they pull away and then you get the red hand and the sword and you're like, come on.
Yeah. I thought it was, and I was like, Deadpool's back, and I was like, oh, it's a dude.
It's the Black Swan.
It's Black Swan. The dude.
No, the dude is...
The dude is Black Swan. I call all people who... I'm horrible with character names. Like, it is a thing. Everyone knows this from my review videos. I frequently forget main characters' names.
So the Black Swan comes back in the story when Gail comes back?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so these 3 issues are basically one thing, so...
Yes. I love the bit with the trolls. I was like, yes!
I love the bit with the anime girls, and they beat them up, and they're in the trunk, like, no happy fun time, breathe easy, like...
Yeah, see? And then the happiness and the laughter comes back, and everything is okay in the world.
Who's on art?
Oh, it's back to, it's back to what you'd expect, Travis.
Oh. So it's back to the art house people again?
Yeah, it's back to Udon and Alvin Lee in that look. I think it's Alvin Lee. That was the thing, is throughout it they changed the head penciler because it was an art house and they could do that.
Yeah.
You don't have anything like that anymore, though. Like, Udon was a weird flash in the pan where you had this art house that was hired out for this, but you don't have other companies doing that. Like, you just have the artist pulled together like normally. Yeah, Alvin Lee.
Yeah.
But the end of the first chunk of this run, like, you see Deadpool's body show up, and he's just kind of out of it, and Alex immediately shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
And you get this bit where Alex is like, I feel like he killed my brother, which is weird because I don't have a brother. But as you go on, you kind of get these flashes back through her run of Agent X, and kind of seeing this amalgamation of Neho, Deadpool, and Black Swan, and how it all combined to make this character that we've been reading. Except for the junk issues.
Yeah, yeah. We forget about those.
But you can't, because they have to address the fact that Sandy and him slept together.
That's all. That's about it.
But she's able to twist that around, because then it ends up that Alex and Outlaw get together, and then Sandy and Taskmaster get together, and it works.
Like in sitcoms, everything turns out okay in the end.
Yeah, and everybody slept with each other.
Yeah, see?
And you just get this whole thing, but you see the way that she's able to develop the character. She took all this bit, and so they make a big point about the kind of music people like. So, like, Black Swan's really big into classical German composers. Neho's really big into Radiohead. They make a point at the beginning of this that Black Swan accidentally took Neho's sense of honor, which was a big part of why he didn't kill Sandy earlier, and all that, and that plays in. And just all these different character elements get moved and switched around as part of it, as with his power, as he has the three of them together and makes everything work. And you see that, like, because they find out in this arc that Deadpool's healing factor has a mental component, that's why it was able to be moved and shipped around, and basically was copied across all three of them. And so that's how that comes about. Yeah. And it's just this bizarre display of character development in a weird way that's just played all throughout, and the types of humor that have played. So, like, Alex's sense of, like, what is kind of pristine and right, and kind of, because he does have a kind of sense of, like, that's not proper in a weird way, but he's also this down and dirty mercenary guy who's eating frozen corn dogs. And so you get that character conflict, and you see where it comes from. And it's just this...
Yeah, and I like the interaction, like, when they're in the car. Between Alex and Deadpool. Because it's just so good, because it's like, it's like comedic genius, in a way.
Yeah, and then
it's so good, and it's so, like, I like having things answered, and this definitely gives you all the answers that you've been looking for.
And the coolest part is you see how Agent X throughout this entire run was actually different from Deadpool, despite all the similarities. So all this time we thought he was just some amnesiac with, like, a face change. It turned out to be something different.
And I like that, because it's not gimmicky. Like, he's not. Alex was not Deadpool, and it's something that's different, and something that you're not. Like I said, Gail does that real well. She does it, like, she makes these twists that you're, like, you think you know exactly where it's going, and then she just totally, like, goes, no, you don't, and 180s it. And I love that, because I love being surprised and being proven wrong, that I don't know what exactly is going on. I find that it's fun. It makes reading comics fun.
Yeah.
Which comics should be fun. When you read, you should have fun.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's pretty much it. So, did you guys have any closing thoughts on this run?
I would like Gail to write Deadpool again and be able to, like Travis said, kind of, have complete creative control over it. I think would be really interesting. And I hope that one day that can happen, but since he's being killed off, I don't know when. But that would be, that would make me a very happy human. And it would be interesting to see if you would like it as well as this run. Since this is your all-time favorite run, it would be interesting to see if you're writing it now.
I couldn't.
clearly he is irrational when it comes to this book. So he defined that when he said great character development is eating a frozen corn dog. So yeah, that pretty much sums up his rational view of this run of books. It's comedy, Matt.
What kind of person eats frozen corn dog? This kind of person. So, two things is, one thing I'd really like to see is I'd like to see Alex Hayden come back into the Marvel Universe and then play with him, because I feel like that would be a good counterbalance to Deadpool in some way and kind of open up this mercenary area that they don't quite...
That's what I told you last week. They're going to kill off Deadpool and bring him back. Bring Agent X back.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be good. The other thing is Taskmaster in here, the way he's written and played, because he's kind of like, in a weird way, the straight man in some scenarios. Mm-hmm. The way they play him, he's not like Skeletor here. He's not the cackling, teaching the villain school of the way he's normally written.
He's very humanized, I would say.
Yeah, and he's a mercenary, and he's kind of on the job, and he loves the Spice Girls, and he loves his pro wrestling, and he's just this, like, dude, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that take on Taskmaster, but he's such a separate character from the other one, and I'd like to see more of that as well. And it's just these elements that make this comic so great, and there's nothing quite like it. So
yeah, and Gail writes, like I said, she writes villains very, like she writes them like that so that you can relate to them, and she writes them completely different than a lot of other people do, where they're just like completely bad and they're just, you know, out for like world domination. She gives them a very like human side, and I think a very like relatable side as well, and makes you like them. Like, I don't know. It would be interesting. I definitely want to now read more Taskmaster just to kind of compare and see. But it would be interesting.
Oh, well.
So, yeah.
Well, there really is no place, though, is there, that there's a large breadth of Taskmaster, right? I mean, you got that miniseries that you talked about, but there's not like there's any place where they used him extensively, is there?
Well, so he had that mini. Van Lente did another 4-issue mini later with kind of the other breadth of Taskmaster. He was an Avengers villain for a while. He was used in Avengers The Initiative as kind of a supporting character throughout that entire run.
Okay. So there are some places, if you're really curious about seeing the other Taskmaster that gets presented, there are some places where you're... Because I've only seen it like, you know, bits and pieces here and there, and not any place that you could really get into reading about Taskmaster.
He's also in Deadpool issue 2, which informs some of this run in a way, and it's part of the Joe Kelly run. That's a fairly classic issue that kind of says a lot about both characters. So there's that.
Do you like Joe Kelly's run?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. It's probably, honestly, a little better crafted than this one in some ways, but no, it's basically my second favorite run of comics.
He gave you a face.
I do want to check that out because I like Joe Kelly. Not that I dislike Gail, but I like Joe Kelly, so I'd be curious to see what.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, as much of a Deadpool fan as I am, I haven't read his run yet. So
you know, especially because clearly he started it out, right?
I mean,
other than that, Deadpool was resigned to some of the X books, but
yeah, like he was in New Mutants for one issue,
right.
And then he was in X-Force a smattering of times. Then he had 2 minis before that.
Oh.
So like Mark Waid did a bit that I feel like maybe informed a little bit, but Joe Kelly really made the character who he is and who we understand him today, and that's really the core chunk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I gotta read it. I gotta read it so I can find out who's responsible for all this. The root of the evil.
Are you going to read the final issue where they kill Deadpool and like cherish it forever?
No. I am not. I am not spending money on a Deadpool book that might encourage them to bring Deadpool back.
He's coming back.
But
Yeah.
I will certainly eat a slice of pie or a cupcake in celebration of him being gone.
For a month.
For sure. Till the Secret Wars, right?
Well, that's the thing that I don't get. So, like, he died in this run. He died 8 issues before this run started. He also technically died before that in the Deadpool and Death Annual. Then died again later.
This is a gimmick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Deadpool, like.
Right. Well, that doesn't mean anything. I already said that when they first announced that he was dying. I'm like, that's an announcement? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't.
It's. I don't know.
But it's got Stacy reading it again, see, so that's success.
Yeah. Begrudgingly, though.
Yeah, but you have to go back and see what happens. See, that's why they did the announcement.
At least it's only 4 issues, and I don't have to buy like 10 of them.
Right.
And then,
I don't think I would have done it then. I think in that case I would have only bought the final issue and have been fine with it.
Right. And I guess my thing is that I like Deadpool when Deadpool is attached to other things. I like Deadpool when it's not about Deadpool.
You might like the Night of the Living Deadpool or whatever the new one is, Return of the Living Deadpool. You might like that because it's. No, you don't think you would?
no, it's good. So he wouldn't like it.
Wow.
Fair enough. I'm happy not to spend my money there.
But I do like that one because I like Liz and I think he's written. It's interesting art. I think it's really cool art and it's just interesting. If you like zombies, it's a cool concept. But it is Deadpool, so.
I liked Deadpool Art of War. That was fun. Up until like the last couple pages kind of wrecked the story, but.
Because it was mostly Deadpool.
No, it's just the fact that then they decided to, kind of break the fourth wall in a way that I never think is funny by putting the Marvel editors actually in the book with the book, with Deadpool. I just don't find that.
Oh, that's weird.
I didn't find that aspect of it funny. But I thought he was funny all the way through it. Him, starting a war basically and.
Yeah. I think sometimes for people that don't totally love Deadpool, if he's in it and he starts the story, but then it's not totally about him, like you said, I think it's easier. He's easier for people to take. So, I guess I don't know. It's definitely an acquired taste. It's like Harley Quinn, though. I mean, I have the first trade of Harley. I know nothing about Harley, and it'll be interesting to see if I like her. But I don't know. It's just you like the characters that you like, and you don't like I don't particularly care for Superman or Captain America.
I can get behind that too. So.
Yeah.
See, I love all this stuff. I just love comics. I just have more love than you guys.
That's it. I'm obviously a crotchety old man, and I have no sense of humor, and that's why clearly I don't like Deadpool because it is the paragon of funny. So,
yeah, if you don't like
and I don't.
If you don't, and I know a lot of people like don't like sitcoms because they don't care for the humor or whatever.
I don't like dumb humor.
Yeah, I'm that way with movies, but not so much with I love older sitcoms. Like those Seinfeld is one of my absolute favorite TV shows ever, and a lot of people can't stand that show. So it's an acquired taste, and I don't know.
And it's not that I don't think that Gail is a funny writer. I think she is a funny writer. She's written funny stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, her Secret Six run is it's a good combination of funny and dark.
Right. But I like dark humor as opposed to frozen corn dogs and.
Yeah, she's definitely more of a dark humor writer now than she was in this Deadpool run for sure.
There's some dark comedy in there too. I don't know. Anyways. But we're venturing off into just general talk, so I'm going to cap it. So, good night, everyone.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome, buddy.
This was fun, guys.